Mr. Longfoot by Regine Schindler, illustrated by Sita Jucker. The English version by Olive Jones. Mr. Longfoot was ashamed of his feet. He envied anyone who could walk into a shoe shop and buy a pair of shoes just like that. He couldn't. His feet were much too long, and no shop sold a big enough size. He didn't even know what size he took, and had to have his shoes made by hand. "I reckon they're about 20, sir," said the man who made them. "I'm afraid they'll be rather expensive." They were very expensive indeed. For a long time, Mr. Longfoot worked in an office, using an adding machine and typing lists of figures. He would much rather have been a teacher, because he liked children and he didn't like figures at all. But in an office, he could hide his feet under a desk. Size 20 indeed! Why couldn't he have ordinary feet like other men, so that people wouldn't stare at them or laugh at him? Sometimes people in the tram stood on the ends of his shoes, and then Mr. Longfoot came home with black and blue toes. The people weren't particularly close to him, so they didn't realize they were standing on his feet. He didn't like to protest or pull his shoes back in case he made them fall over, and then everyone would notice his feet. He often went past his stop to the last tram stage where most people got off, so no one would be standing on his feet. This meant he had to buy another ticket to get back, but at least he was sure of a seat then and could tuck his feet out of sight. What with these extra tickets and the high cost of his shoes, because of course the tops wore out as quickly as the soles, poor Mr. Longfoot was always short of money. One evening, as Mr. Longfoot felt for his keys, he looked at the names of all the other people in the same block of flats. Miller, Clark, Taylor, Jones, Walker, Stewart. His name was at the top. And what a silly name it was. Longfoot. It made people look at his feet at once. As he climbed up to his top floor flat, slowly, because long feet are awkward on stairs, he decided to change his name and move to another part of town. No one would know him there. He slept badly that night because he was so busy thinking of a new name for himself. And then he had a brilliant idea. He'd keep his own name but turn it back to front. Tufknoll! He said it over and over to himself to get used to it. Tufknoll! Next morning, he asked for a few days off from the office to look for a new flat. He bought newspapers from a kiosk and read all the housing advertisements. One looked hopeful. Cheap attic flat to let, single gentleman. Well, he was single so far, apart from having a canary. He went to the nearest telephone. "My name is Tufknoll. I should like to see the attic flat you're advertising," he said politely. "What was the name?" "Tufknoll." "Tufknoll? Are you foreign? I don't want foreigners living here." And the receiver was slammed down. Mr. Longfoot was stupefied. "Do I really sound like a foreigner?" he thought. He decided he'd have to pronounce his name differently. Tufknoll. That sounded less foreign. He bought 3 more newspapers next day and read all the flats to let advertisements. One was for a friendly, quiet gentleman. He'd try that. Mr. Longfoot went to the telephone again. "My name is Tufknoll," he said very clearly, and perhaps a little loudly. "I'd like to look at your flat." Didn't you say that I was looking for a quiet tenant? A fretful woman's voice answered. I have sensitive nerves, and you sound much too noisy. And again the receiver was put down. Perhaps he had better change his name, or just alter the letters round once more? He wrote them down and looked at them. How about Loftagon? Well, he was just as unlucky with that. He spoke very softly next time he tried, and the woman who answered thought he was a burglar ringing up to see if the house was empty. She rang off quickly. Next day, Mr. Longfoot felt very miserable. He almost decided he'd have to stay in his old flat. But he put his feet up on a chair. Oh dear, it made them look longer than ever. And took up the last newspaper he had bought. His eye was caught by an advertisement which said in bold letters, "Nice flat available in same house." Above this he read in smaller print, 20 children urgently looking for a play school teacher. Cheerful personality. Then, nice flat available in same house. No good, thought Mr. Longfoot. He wasn't a play school teacher. He got up and cooked a meal of spaghetti for himself and fed his canary. But he kept thinking of the advertisement. In the end, he took his coat off the door, left his flat, and found a telephone. "My name is Longfoot," he said. "Maximilian Longfoot. I saw your advertisement. Are you looking for a woman play school teacher, or would a man do?" "Well," said a woman's voice, "I don't quite know. Could you come and see us? Tomorrow, perhaps, or even tonight? Yes, that's fine. We can talk about it then. 6 o'clock. Good. I'll look forward to seeing you. Goodbye, Mr. Longleg." Mr. Longfoot chuckled. He hadn't done that for ages. The woman on the phone had called him Longleg. Let's hope that meant the people he was to meet wouldn't look first at his feet. Back home, he looked at himself in the mirror. What ought a play school teacher to look like, he wondered. What he saw was a longish face, brown eyes, a rather pointed nose. Nothing out of the ordinary, not even glasses or a beard. Would those 20 children want something more exciting? He brushed his teeth, combed his hair, washed his hands, and put on a real silk tie. It was light green with violet flowers and had once belonged to his grandfather. After a long ride on the tram, Mr. Longfoot found the right address. He rang the doorbell nervously. Ding dong! And a young man opened the door. "Mr. Longleg, do come in. The parents are looking forward to meeting you." "But," stammered Mr. Longfoot, I thought this was a play school." "It is," said the young man, "but the parents always decide who is to look after their children. That's why we are all here now. Come and meet them." They went into a room where mothers and fathers were sitting on chairs and tables meant for small children. Some sat on mattresses on the floor. Mr. Longfoot was given an armchair. It only had 3 legs, so it was a bit difficult to keep from tipping over, but it was comfortable, with plenty of room under it to hide his long feet. He wished he hadn't put on his silk tie, because the mothers and fathers all wore what they pleased. He felt ill at ease at first, but when they all asked him questions and talked him together, he felt happier. "What's your job, Mr. Longleg? The children are a bit out of hand. Can you manage them?" "Do you know any games?" "We bring them here at 9 o'clock and fetch them at 1. "The hamsters are normally fed at 11. And then someone asked, "Do you really like children, Mr. Longleg?" "Very much indeed," said Mr. Longfoot. It was the first time they had given him a chance to get a word in. Then they were all quiet until one father said, "Mr. Longleg, are you willing to have a go at this job?" Mr. Longfoot could only nod. He was much too excited to talk. Late that night, when he lay in bed, Mr. Longfoot realized that all the new job meant he would never have to go to the office again, never travel on that crowded tram, and he would be working with real live children, not dull figures. It was not long before Mr. Longfoot moved into the play school with a nice flat above it. He had a rollicking time with the children all the morning, and by 1:15 they'd all gone home and he was cooking his spaghetti or his fish fingers in his flat. He read many books about children, but it was the boys and girls themselves who taught him most, especially new and exciting games. The mornings went by in a flash. There was one game they all loved, the foot game. 3 children would rush to sit on each of his feet, and he would cross the room with them from one corner to the other while they sang a song they made up themselves. On Mr. Longfoot's shoes we ride, right foot, left foot, 3 astride. Who will get first to the other side? The children would all shout with excitement as they got near the opposite corner, and they took turns to play it until Mr. Longfoot sank exhausted into his rickety armchair. Of course, the mothers and fathers didn't go on calling him Mr. Longleg, but by the time they realized that his real name was Longfoot, they had got used to his wearing a size 20. And in summer, when the children went barefoot, Mr. Longfoot did too, which was a great saving as it didn't wear out his expensive shoes. The whole of the play school often went for long, exciting walks, and when some of the smaller boys and girls got tired, they took a rest on Mr. Longfoot's shoes. Of course, he got tired too, but he didn't mind. He was happy. Wee! Woo! Yeah! Ooh, look at that! Oh! Ew! Ha ha! Woo! Da 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 da. Da-da. The end.